In the very design of how we work together, there's a fundamental flaw, a silent, hidden vulnerability that can take the smartest people you know and make them completely ineffective. Sometimes even dangerous. We're not talking about a lack of smarts here, but a complete failure of intelligence. And today, we're going to dissect exactly how that failure happens.
Just let that sink in for a second. This isn't just some witty line. It's a diagnosis. It points to a quiet disease that infects boardrooms, government offices, and project teams everywhere. See, most of us think we're being great collaborators when we get to an agreement quickly. But what if that's not what's happening? What if instead of collaborating, you're actually being captured? That's the core paradox of groupthink. It's a system that takes our deepest human need to belong and turns it into a strategic blindfold.
So, to really understand this trap, we have to map out its architecture. First, we'll dive into the consensus paradox, how that search for harmony can absolutely kill the truth. Then, we'll break down the censorship loop, the step-by-step process of how thinking decays. After that, we'll look at the biology of belonging to understand why our brains are so wired to fall for this. And finally, we'll arm you with the counter playbook, a set of real tactics for taking back your intellectual independence.
All right, let's start with a scene that I'm willing to bet is going to feel deeply familiar, because this isn't some abstract theory. It's a pattern, a recurring trap we have all walked right into, whether we knew it or not. You can feel it right in your gut, can't you? The numbers don't quite add up, the logic is shaky, the whole plan just feels wrong. You go to open your mouth to say something, but then you scan the room. Your boss is nodding along, totally sold. Your colleagues, people you respect, they're all smiling, giving the thumbs up. And right there, in that split second, your brain runs a quick calculation. Do I speak up and risk being that person, the difficult one, the one who isn't a team player? Or do I just stay quiet and keep the peace? And you stay quiet.
What you just went through, that wasn't just peer pressure. It's the enforcement of something called a consensus monopoly. And this really frames the conflict perfectly. This isn't about good people or bad people. It's a fight between two core values, harmony versus truth. And in a group that's caught in this trap, harmony wins every single time. The result is this slow, steady erosion of your cognitive sovereignty, where your own ability to think for yourself is handed over to the group. You end up going along with a collective delusion you knew was wrong, but the social price of saying so just felt way too high.
Now, this kind of thing doesn't just happen randomly. It's a system. It's a feedback loop that gets stronger and stronger. This right here, this is where the trap slams shut. It's called the Consensus-Censorship Loop, and it's a 4-stage process that systematically disconnects a group from reality. Let's walk through it. Okay, so stage 1 is the insulation phase. The group basically closes its doors to the outside world, creating this little bubble where only ideas that confirm the plan are allowed in. Anyone from the outside with a different take? Ignored. Data that contradicts the plan? Dismissed. The group story becomes the only reality that matters. Then comes stage 2, direct pressure. The second someone is brave enough to ask, hey, wait a minute, are we sure about this? They get shut down. They're accused of being negative or not being committed. And that pressure, well, it naturally leads to the most tragic stage of all, self-censorship. And finally, the whole loop gets locked into place by something called the mind guard.
Let's just zoom in on that self-censorship piece for a moment, because this is where the real heartbreak is. It creates this bizarre state called pluralistic ignorance. To avoid this social pain of being singled out, every person in the room starts filtering themselves. They look at all the other silent nodding heads and think, wow, it must just be me. I guess I'm the only one who has a problem with this. But here's the cruel, ironic twist. Very often, the entire room is filled with people thinking the exact same thing. Everyone is conforming to a decision that literally nobody in the room actually believes in.
And that brings us to the final unshakable lock on the delusion, the mind guards. These are usually loyal, well-respected members of the team who see it as their job to protect the group's morale and the leader's confidence. They become gatekeepers. They actively intercept any bad news or dissenting opinions before they can ever reach the person in charge. They're preserving what's called the illusion of invulnerability, making sure the team can march with 100% confidence right off a cliff, completely shielded from the reality of the drop just ahead. Okay, so the mechanics of the trap are pretty clear, but that just leads to a much deeper question. Why on earth are we so vulnerable to this? Why do a bunch of smart, capable people fall into the state of collective delusion so easily? Well, the answer isn't a flaw in our character. It's a feature in our code. It's our biology. I mean, really think about that. Why does the simple act of disagreeing in a meeting feel so dangerous? Why does the fear of being cast out feel less like a little social awkwardness and more like a genuine life or death threat?
The answer is, to your brain, there's almost no difference at all. Neuroscientists have shown that the fear of social rejection lights up the exact same parts of the brain as physical pain does. This is an old program running in our heads. For our ancestors, getting kicked out of the tribe wasn't just embarrassing, it was a death sentence. You needed the group to survive, so our brains evolved to treat being ostracized like a physical attack. When you think about speaking up against the group, your amygdala, your brain's little alarm system, just goes haywire, and it completely overrides your rational brain. It's basically screaming, don't do it, stay with the tribe, survive.
And this deep biological need is captured perfectly by something called social identity theory. Basically, our sense of who we are isn't just about us as individuals, it's deeply connected to the groups we belong to. Our feeling of self-worth is tied to being part of the in-group. So when you go along with the group's decision, you're not just trying to avoid a fight. You are performing a belonging ritual. You are signaling, I'm one of you, reinforcing your identity, and making sure your spot in the tribe is safe. And that is an incredibly powerful subconscious drive.
All right, we've diagnosed the illness, we've looked at the mechanics, we've gone into the biology. Now, let's talk about the cure. How do we break this loop? How do we reclaim our own cognitive sovereignty and help our teams do the same? We need a counter playbook.
This right here is the single most important strategic idea you need to grasp. The entire groupthink machine is designed to find disagreement and stomp it out. So our counter strategy has to be to intentionally protect it, maybe even reward it. The goal isn't to get rid of conflict, it's to create healthy conflict. Agency for you and your group is reclaimed by protecting the node of dissent.
So how do we actually do that? Here are 4 super effective practical tactics to shut down groupthink. First, label the quiet. When you see everyone agreeing too fast, call it out as a potential red flag. Second, institutionalize the devil's advocate. Third, integrate an external node, which means bringing in an outside voice. And finally, and this is maybe the most powerful of all, practice the leader's silence. Let's dig into a couple of the biggest game changers here. Let's talk about the devil's advocate. Now, this is not about just saying, hey, everyone, feel free to speak up. That's too fuzzy. This is about making dissent an official part of someone's job. In every big meeting, you formally assign one person the role of finding everything wrong with the plan. All of a sudden, pointing out flaws isn't an act of betrayal. It's that person doing their job well. It brilliantly removes the social fear from the equation and turns dissent from a threat into a valuable, expected contribution. Now, for any leaders listening, this next one is absolutely crucial, and it feels completely backwards, but it works. Practice the leader's silence. The second a leader shares their opinion, they create something called an anchoring bias. The conversation stops being about finding the best answer and starts being about agreeing with the boss. By intentionally keeping your opinion to yourself until every single other person has spoken, you create the psychological safety people need to give you their real, unfiltered thoughts. You get the truth, not just an echo.
Ultimately, what all of this comes down to is a fundamental rewrite of what an intelligent, successful group actually looks like. We've all been taught that fast, easy agreement is the sign of a great team. It's not. It's usually the sign of a team that has given up on thinking. A group's true intelligence isn't measured by how quickly it agrees, but by the quality and the safety of its disagreements.
So let's just line it all up. The trap is the consensus monopoly, where you put harmony over truth. The escape is building a culture of quality disagreement. The trap is self-censorship because people are afraid. The escape is making the devil's advocate a formal role. The trap is the insulation phase, where you're cut off from reality. The escape is bringing in that external node. And finally, the trap is that deep, subconscious pull of the belonging ritual. The escape is the conscious, deliberate choice to reclaim your cognitive sovereignty. Every single trap has a key. The goal is to learn how to use the key. So the final thought is this. Just being aware of these dynamics is what breaks the system. Once you can actually see the trap, you are no longer its prisoner. Your real job, whether you're a leader or a member of a team, isn't just to manage tasks. Your highest function is to be an architect of truth, to build a system that is strong enough to handle reality. So don't just lead a team, build a reality check.